Hello, everyone. Moving on in our series and playlist with Win with the Closed Sicilian. Now we are moving on to the next chapter and looking at systems with the move Rook B8 early on. This game is between two legends in the famous tournament in Zurich 1953 candidates. With the white pieces David Bronstein and with the black pieces Paul Keres. Two very strong players that came awfully close to becoming world champion. Actually, Bronstein drew his world championship match with Botvinnik in 1951, where he was clearly the stronger player in that match. But it wasn't meant to be, and the match ended in a 12-12 draw. And Keres was right on the cusp a few times as a candidate. So e4, c5, knight c3 from Bronstein, d6, excuse me, g6 from Keres, g3, bishop g7, d3, knight c6, bishop g2, and now we see rook b8 right away. All right, not d6 or e6, preparing knight e7 and castle, so on and so forth. Black's idea is very simple: to get his counterplay started on the queen side as quick as possible before white can even start about launching in the king side attack. And his justification is that, hey, the position is closed and I have time and I can get away with such attack. All right. Now Bronstein, on the other hand, uh, in the Zorg 1953 book, his comments are on this move is that he believes the rook move is basically uh, too stiff, all right, and that it limits the options that black has, okay, and then he doesn't really believe that the move b5 b4 is such a big deal with white's king on the other side of the board. So Bronstein kind of scoffed at this idea. All right, that's his opinion there. Bronstein continued with f4. All right, and it keeps White's basic idea intact. He doesn't make any major changes. d6, knight f3. Now e6, castles, and you can see White basically sticks with the same concepts. Knight ge7, and now Bronstein strikes with the move e5. All right. So this position at first seemed like it was gonna be normal closed Sicilian. Maybe black, maybe white just plays bishop e3, and then you see the knight d4, queen d2, etc. But here Bronstein's idea in playing this move is that, hey, he looks at this move rook b8 as kind of like a wasted tempo, so therefore he starts attacking right away before black can really get consolidated. All right, so he wants to open up the position. Again, this is basic chess principles when you break it down. All right, he believes that black has wasted some time, and so therefore, in order to make your opponent pay for that, you have to have an open position so that the lead in development can show. Right, so he wants to open up this c1 h6 diagonal, right, the dark square diagonal. All right, remember the idea of trading the dark square bishops is very common. All right, also opening up the e file, okay, and gives the knight the e4 square again with the idea of jumping in at some time, right, either the d6 or e4. Okay, again, you have to be willing to sacrifice material as if you're playing white. So what happens? D takes. All right. So Keres on the other side of the board says, you don't have enough compensation. So it's interesting to see the different points of view. Keres is like, yeah, you sacrifice the pawn for all of that stuff. You don't have enough compensation, and the position is still relatively closed enough, and I'll be able to deal with your storm. Your little you know um attack here. Of course, if you want to be really safe as black, you just play d5. Again, keeping the position closed, giving up space, however, and it's going to be a long game. Black is still going to play his thing or whatever on the queen side, and white is going to slowly march up the queen the king side. All right, and this game looks more like a French, some type of French advanced variation, right? So it's kind of um, different flavor to the game. So here, Keres is like, man, I don't believe you, basically. And so this creates those fireworks when you have that. So F takes E5 takes place, knight takes E5. Keres is like, give me that pawn. And so now you see, boom, one of the first defects right here. Again, the rook is precariously placed behind the knight. And thank goodness for the rules of chess. Keres simply plays knight takes f3. Right, just getting himself out of that problem. All right. However, development of white is pretty much complete. All he has to do is bring this rook in there, and it's a wrap. As far as the development is concerned. So, not only is his development accelerated, the rook is still attacked. All right. So queen takes f3, and now rook a8. So it's interesting to me because the rook moved to b8, and then kind of at the end of all of this had to move back to a8. However, he does have a pawn. So pawn is a pawn is a pawn. So wow, what do you say about this position? Okay, white has an excellent position here as far as like its development and attacking opportunities. Black is up material. So the question is, can black, consolidate and take advantage of that? Bronstein plays bishop e3. Attacks this pawn, of course, and the f7 pawn at the same time. All right. Keres, of course, plays castle, and now bishop takes c5. All right, so now material is even, but white has a nice lead in development here. Bishop d4, check. Now, it is interesting because it is black who facilitates the trade of the dark square bishops here. Right? Usually, it's white that is going through the acrobatic maneuvers to get those bishops traded off. Right? But now black forces the issue here. All right. Why does black do that? Well, black is weighing two options here. It's kind of choosing the lesser of two evils. Right? Black is lagging in development, and so his idea is if I trade some pieces off, I can weaken or slow down white's attacking possibilities. However, on the other side, he's creating this void around his king by doing this. But he's hoping that, hey, maybe he can use the queen instead, of the bishop to control or mitigate his weakness on the dark squares. So it's not a perfect world, but he's using his experience and judgment and saying, hey, I think I can deal with this. Of course, takes, check, king h1, and now the rook comes back to b8 to protect this pawn without creating weakness, and it also allows this bishop to move either the d7 or say after b6 or b5, the bishop can come here and take over this diagonal. All right. Knight e4. Again, not not worrying about material, right? But attacking the king. All right. f5, stopping the immediate knight f6, but we have a new weakness on board. And of course, this makes this bishop a little weaker in that all of these pawns, all of black's pawns are on light squares except the one on a7. Okay, again, choosing the lesser of two evils. So he ditches his good pawn structure in order to meet the immediate threat of f6. But of course, this cost um, black's pawn position, and now he has a backward pawn. Bronstein just simply plays queen f4 because the pawn can't really take the knight because of the rook on f8, right? That would just be captured. So now bishop d7. Now he's threatening to actually capture the knight on e4. c3, attacking the queen, and queen b6 is played. If he takes here, then you have this problem with knight c5 hitting the queen and the bishop. So how do you protect the bishop? You go here, but then you have these two pieces very vulnerable. Queen d6. So you're hitting the knight for the first time, and then you're hitting the queen for the second time, and black must lose a piece there. Again, another general principle is that when you are in a worse position, it's very difficult, and you really shouldn't be trying to grab material, because usually it just doesn't work out tactically. Queen b6 is played, and knight f6. And Bronstein is very sharp tactically. I mean, because he's still close to his prime. Remember, he just played Botvinnik 2 years before this tournament for a world championship in 1951. So this is Zurich 1953. So Bronstein is very strong dynamic player here. Here he tosses the knight in with check, threatening the bishop right here, and he's just playing on the fact that if rook takes f6, then he grabs the rook on b8. Okay, so Keres must part with the rook, and queen takes b8 check, bishop to c8, d4. So this pawn's gonna stay where it is, and look how bad this bishop is on c8. Rook f8. Simply rook to f2, guarding the b pawn. Knight to c6. Queen has to get out. Queen f4. Notice the lock here. Bishop d7. Rook e1. You see how black has to pay the price positionally for making the move f5 earlier. So anytime you see f5 played early in the game, there's always these opportunities to attack on the e file and e6. Knight d8. d5. Again, being willing to trade one advantage for the next. Again, this is one of those situations where black will be able to penetrate onto the 7th rank, and with these weak diagonals, this a2 to g8 diagonal and a1 to h8 diagonal, taking that pawn would just be fatal. So after d5, knight f7, d takes Bishop takes. Okay, this is attack, so now just simply b3. Bishop d7. The idea is transfer here and trade this guy off. So now queen d4. Bishop c6. This is easy work. Just trading off. I mean, you have the advantage to exchange. And now rook e6. Okay. And I'm not going to go through the rest of the game. It took about 30 more moves. But Bronstein, um, was able to win. I mean, Kerry struggled on, but the game is pretty much busted here. Um, and he was able to win, pretty convincingly. The rook c8. I'll just go through some of the moves. Rook fe2, e8. Pass pawn was created. Rook a6, rook b2. They're just slowly escorting a pawn up the board. And although Kerry's fought valiantly, just didn't have enough to hold back the onslaught of Bronstein. Um, so that was a really dynamic way of dealing with that early rook b8. And the principle to take from that, because of course moves and variations will change, the principle to take from that is that even if the position is closed, that time is important, even in these kind of openings. But again, the time is only important if you can actually exploit it. And in chess, you exploit that by having an open position whereby you can attack and do things actively with your pieces. And in these type of situations, you must be willing to sacrifice material. For instance, this move e5, brilliant move. Right, just asking black the question. Right, and taking over the initiative, getting the pawn back with a better position, and almost forcing black into a situation where he would trade off his very powerful bishop, right, just to relieve himself of pressure in the position. And you see how Bronstein's moves just kind of forced Keres to create weaknesses on his own, and the exchange basically fell into Bronstein's lap. Very simple, 21 moves. The game is pretty much over for all practical purposes. The last point I want to make on this game is that, again, after e5, it was a very bold move to play d takes e5. Too much optimism on the part of Keres. He thought he didn't take it serious. He figured he could just grab the pawn and it wasn't that big of a deal. So in hindsight, the move e5 is definitely not e5, d5 is keeping it close, definitely the way to go. But again, you have a different type of game whereby you still have the opposite wing attack, but it's gonna just be slower. All right, and just think of French advanced variation. Right, you get a similar type position after the move d5. So that's a wrap on that particular game. And again, all of these games are in the playlist. And Win with the Closed Sicilian. Check the links below. Donate if you feel so inclined. Please, and comments are welcome. And please like and subscribe. And try to blow this channel up, and we get better as we go on. So stay tuned, and we'll be back soon with our next video in the same line.